Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We have a very exciting program. Typically, we would be having makeshift happen, but in the same way, we're going to make shift happen today. Today, again, we are here with a phenomenal featured scientist from the program Picture a Scientist. I am so excited, especially with everything that took place yesterday. I got on my checks, I got on my pearls, and then to be with women who have balanced everything they possibly can balance with well-being, family, friends, and also bringing research to the market to make the world a better place and to improve and to increase patient outcomes. I'm so excited that I hope you've had an opportunity to watch the documentary today, Picture a Scientist. And if you haven't watched it yet, please take the time to do so. I would like to thank the people that brought it to us, Frequency Therapeutics, for their contributions, staying on top of this and making sure that this was a priority. This is how we're going to bring in the year. This is how we're going to set the tone. And I appreciate each and every one of you being here with us today. As you can see, I'm very excited about the program and everything we're about to embark on today. Coming up, I would like to introduce you to the people that were part of the program and also to our panelists. If they can take this opportunity to give us a brief description of who they are, what is it they do, and what brought them here today, that would be great. Let's start off with Lisa Geller.
Thank you, Edie. So I come to the science part of this. I have a PhD in biology, and I was an academic scientist for rather a long time. And then I made a change and I switched to law, and I'm currently head of intellectual property for Frequency Therapeutics. Thank you, Frequency, for this. And I have been involved really of necessity since I was an undergraduate, but more and more so in graduate school and postdoc, in issues around ethics and the practice of science, and particularly issues for women and minorities who work in science and want to come into science. And I currently co-chair the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee at Frequency.
Again, I couldn't thank Frequency enough for powering today's program and also allowing our member organizations, our partners to watch the film. Again, I'm just so overexcited right now. Isabelle, who's with Boston University School of Medicine, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
I come from Spain. I have a PhD in biochemistry and molecular biology. I do research here at BU in the intersection between cancer and embryonic development. And beyond the bench, I really love developing talent. So I've run a number of programs that had to do with empowering all of our trainees and also our faculty to become more and to fulfill their careers as they want to. And in particular, right now, I am the director of diversity and inclusion program called STARS here at GMS, Graduate Medical Sciences here in the School of Medicine. And I'm very, very happy to be here. And I wanted to join because I thought that having the perspective of somebody that is not born in the US was important for the discussion.
I agree wholeheartedly. And thank you for joining us today, Isabelle. And Jane, last but not least, thank you. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and as many requests as you had. We appreciate you sharing this day with us.
Oh, sure, my pleasure. Thanks, Edie. So I'm Jane Willenbring. I'm an associate professor of geological sciences at Stanford University, and I study how landscapes evolve over time. And you might know me from Picture a Scientist. I feel like there's always information asymmetry when I talk to audiences because they have seen me crying and I don't know you much at all. But it's really nice to be here. And as some of you maybe, if you've seen Picture a Scientist already, or if you have yet to, I'm this whole thing started, I guess, when I I wrote a Title IX complaint against my master's supervisor for sexual discrimination and harassment from events that happened in 1999, 2000, 2001. So it was a long time ago. And when I had a daughter come to the lab with me and say, I want to be a scientist like you, mommy, something sort of switched in my brain. And I thought, although it's nice what I've been doing for women in science, like hiring them, encouraging them, what would be better is to change structures and honestly remove people so that we make a better academia. So excited for the conversation. This will be great.
I'm very excited. I'm so super excited to even be on the panel. I'm so honored to be with each and every one of you. And then I'm also honored for all the people that are tuning in right now. I can't see anyone right now, but I know that the faithful from Mass Bio's community is here, and also want to welcome our guests from around the world. Thank you for joining us. But I'd like to go over the structure with you quickly. For the first half of the program, we're going to do a Q&A with me and a panelist, and then we're going to open up the discussion for the audience to ask questions, but please feel free to enter your questions at any given time for any of the guests. Are we all set? Are we all on board? All right, let's get started. As you can tell, I'm very excited about what's going on. And for those who were able to see the program prior to, you were sent a link to screen the documentary Picture Scientists, which chronicles the groundswell of researchers who are writing a new chapter for women scientists. Biologist Nancy Hopkins, chemist Raychelle Burks, and geologist here with us, Jane, lead viewers on a journey deep into their own experiences into the sciences, ranging from brutal harassment to years of subtle slights. Along the way, from cramped laboratories to spectacular field stations, we encounter scientific luminaries, including social scientists, neuroscientists, and psychologists, who provide new perspectives on how to make science itself more diverse, equitable, and open to all. So we're going to start off the questions with talking about the main theme that took place throughout the Picture Scientists. Let's talk about the tip of the iceberg. The National Academy of Science report describes sexual harassment as an iceberg, with the vast majority consisting of subtle slights and microaggressions. Audience, as well as to our panelists. And I'm going to start this question off with Lisa, since she has both the legal scientific background. What can we all do as a community to bring the issue to the forefront?
So there is sexual harassment and discrimination. There is currently overlap. We can hope that sexual harassment is decreasing, that we are learning to recognize that, and at least the prosecution of it more and more often now is, deterrence helps. I hope that gone are the days of people that I've heard from where postdocs had to tolerate being hit or, forced to engage in some kind of sexual contact. I hope that's gone. But I think now those things shouldn't be overlooked, but now more and more it is these kinds of microaggressions and often just behaviors that people don't know about. And the question is, how do we solve that? And I think that a lot of it as a community is helping people in various ways to see and to understand what the effects are of those behaviors. But first, they have to know what those behaviors are. And that means people have to be able to speak up. But often I find that women and minorities need to know when there are things that you have just accepted and you didn't think about. Do you accept the fact that you just have a hard time getting into a conversation? And you need allies to help you to make people stop talking and let you in. There are a number of different things like that that can happen. There are also things that people aren't aware of that are simply, I want to say, social. If you have ever been a lactating human and you're in a place where people keep running the meetings over time, you know what I'm talking about. And somebody's got to speak up for you if you can't speak up for yourself in those settings. Is that too extreme? Oh, well.
No, thank you for that commentary. Isabelle, you're currently in academia. Please tell us your response to what Lisa just said.
I totally agree with Lisa that we need to raise awareness of the problems, and campaigns like these make it happen, make shift happen, sorry. And also the documentary are really good platforms for all of the society to really learn what is going on out there. And we all need to learn, because this is not something exclusive to scientists. And I think it applies to many other professions. And it's not exclusive to women either. So, and then as following up Lisa, educating is a big part of this. We need to be aware of the reports or the literature in discrimination in this case, or harassment. We need to educate the new generations on these findings. And more importantly, what are the solutions that every individual has to put in place to be less biased, to not harass other people, to really accept everybody as they are. I mean, this is a big part of it. And of course, as Lisa said, the places of work need to make a safe work environment. And without these, I mean, and that includes conferences, as we saw earlier in the movie, where everything goes sometimes. And in addition to this, I think there is, I don't know how to call it, I guess structural problems, I guess that's what they call it now, like funding agencies that don't realize that we are diverse. We speak differently. We express each other differently. We do things differently. We want to do things differently. And also, since companies are here joining, I will just my suggestion to them is that there is an applicant pool that is very diverse out there. When you put a job posting out there, you don't get applicants that are diverse. Think about what is in that job posting that is preventing some applicants from applying. So that's my takeaway.
Jane, I could only imagine everything that you've gone through, and it was very bold of you to just put everything out there and be part of the documentary. Again, thank you. And what are some of the things, if you can speak directly, not just to Massachusetts life sciences industry, but you're speaking to those around the world, what can we do differently to talk about this more in a community and bring some of these issues to the forefront, that men are also engaged in the topic also and part of the solution?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I've heard from a lot of different people, and I think that, you know, one of the experiences that women have when watching the film is just sort of like a relief, just feeling, you know, so happy that these things are finally out in the open being said. And I think that this is sort of a carryover from the Me Too movement, and same with, you know, sort of the Black Lives Matter movement, and how we have to start talking about these things before that they actually get better. And one of the things that I've heard from a lot of men who've, you know, contacted me, one guy actually was like driving across the country and stopped on the side of the road after he heard an interview with me on NPR. And he called my office and left me a voicemail, and it said, you know, so I think it's resonated with a lot of people. And one of the things that I've heard from a lot of men in my field is like, they knew some of the aspects of the things that are in the film, you know, they kind of knew them with their brains, but it wasn't until they actually saw, you know, the stories and felt the impact that they knew it, you know, kind of in I mean, I want to say in the heart, but like, you know it in a different part of your brain. And so I think it's sort of that question, you know, people always say like, what's your why? You know, there's a lot of things that you can do in terms of what can be done for these things, but until you like really feel why you need to do some of this stuff, I think the what is sort of irrelevant. You know, you can kind of walk the walk or talk the talk, but when you really feel something, you feel so much more, you know, engaged and inclined to step in there. And one of the things, not to go on too long, sorry, one of the things
okay.
sort of kind of, hits people. If you've seen the film, you think about the role of Adam Lewis, the person who is in the field with me. And I think that, one of the things that I hope people take away is like, it's easy to cast blame on, what he didn't do and what he should have done. But I feel like there's, we're all Adam Lewises in a way. Like there probably were times when someone wanted us to speak up for them and we didn't. And so just recognizing that that's something that we can all do better, and that it's not like the other person who's being necessarily not the best bystander, but like just kind of to look internally and think about how each of us can be better.
Well,
sorry.
No, that's totally fine. Thank you for sharing that view. And to continue on with that, another theme within the documentary was the underneath. And Dr. Burks talked about the pressure of conforming her reactions to inappropriate behavior so she isn't dismissed and cast into the angry Black woman trope. I've been there. What are some of the ways that you have felt pressure to conform, and how did it impact you and your work? Let's start with Isabelle.
So where do I start? First, I was born in a different culture with different values, with different ways of expressing, with different ways of participating in discussions, with different ways of moving my hands. And all of these had to go. Mm-hmm. Because I was not listened to. People could not go beyond the image or the expectations of what it is a professional. And since you don't match that, you have to adapt to all of these ways. The unfortunate, I guess, outcome of all of these is that many times I did not speak because for the fear of being seen as not conforming to the expectations. And that is sad, actually, because I could have made a difference in many places and in many discussions when I didn't. And again, I guess if we all accept each other as we are, with our cultural differences, with our way of expressing, and so on and so forth, I think we will all benefit. That will be my take on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa, if you can jump in and tell us your perspective on this.
Well, I mean, certainly there's the self-imposed pressure, and then there's the outside. I've certainly been told that I'm too blunt. I expect too much. You have to go slowly. I'm not sufficiently respectful or deferential to senior people. I've even been told that my earrings are too scary. It just makes you feel like everything is under scrutiny, and you have to pick your times and pick your battles. And I think the thing that, in thinking of conformity, the real question that I find myself asking a lot is, what am I conforming to? And it is a white male culture. And I'm not sure why that has to be our pillar, by which everything is measured. And the real question, I think, for many of us is, how do we broaden that out to be more inclusive?
Well, we're going to work on that, and we're going to work on that together to figure this out. Jane, what do you suggest?
Hi, yeah, I have been thinking since you asked that about how I do this. And I think that, one of the hazards of being a person who is severely harassed is that sometimes I'm this is not funny, but sometimes I'm impervious to like when people say small things that, so I feel like I really don't notice a lot of some of the, sort of minor things that people mention about me. And I'm also not particularly bothered by just just conforming myself to expectations of the workplace that people have for me. I do feel like sometimes it's a, kind of a hard task though, even if I'm not bothered to conform, because people have different ideas about what you should do. Some people want you to dress more feminine, and then some people want you to dress less feminine. And so like, even though I'm perfectly happy, if people tell me that I'm doing something wrong in the workplace, to do something differently, like there are so many opinions about what that looks like that I think we really, need to think about that. Like, are we setting people up to fail just with, our random sort of trivial expectations that they have for us? I'm a little bit shielded from such things because I am a geologist, and we often wear fleece. That's like dressing up for us. So,
oh gosh, oh yes, the fleece vest.
But I feel like as someone who doesn't really mind, I actually take delight in making sure that other people who want to have pink hair and blue hair and nose rings have the ability to express themselves in that way, because I'm a bit boring, I guess. So I'm happy to fight for other people's right to be exciting.
Boring is not a word I would associate with you, just by getting to know you over this short amount of time. So no, that's not one word I would use to describe you, but thank you for being that champion and advocate for those who sometimes do not have the voice themselves to express it. And that leads us right into the next question. And another theme was data-driven. And Dr. Hopkins talked about her early efforts to involve other women in her fight for equity. And this was at MIT. She said, I expected to fight alone. I didn't expect anyone to fight with me. However, you feel alone sometimes in your struggles. How can we find others with whom to share our experiences with, or to feel less alone? When you're a woman, when you're a person of color, when you have a disability, anything that makes you feel as if you're the only. And Jane, if you don't mind, if you would share your perspective and experiences in this part of your journey.
Yeah, well, I think that the most important thing is just, talking about your experiences. I feel like a lot of times, we suffer in silence when we need not do so. And, this doesn't mean like send a company-wide email, obviously, but just find, a couple of kindred spirits who you think would be okay to talk to, and then, kind of branch off from there. And, one of the things, I guess this is a company setting, not academia, but one of the things that was really wonderful about my previous institution is that, if we were in a faculty meeting or something like that, and someone said something sort of unfortunate, then there would be a number of us who would actually speak up. And so I feel like it's when you have a group of people that are all working toward a common goal, it's not so much like, oh, this is all on me. I have to be the one to bring this up yet again. Because I feel like if there's just one person, then, it's easy to kind of tune that one person out and kind of marginalize them. But if you can actually get a group of people together and, see what can be done as a group, I think it's really wonderful. That part of the film always like really makes me cry, because that was one of my experiences too. I thought that I was going in this alone. And the more I talked about it, the more I feel like, sometimes I feel like I have an army behind me, but then sometimes I think I have an army in front of me, kind of like they have gone farther now as a result of just saying something, just speaking your truth. And I think, one of the things that I definitely did not do when I was on the path to becoming a professor is to tell men anything. If I even talked, it would be sort of hushed tones to women who I thought were allies. And now I've realized that men actually want to know. They want to know. They don't want to think, you know, be in the dark about some of this stuff. And I think it's been really surprising to me, the reaction of men to this film and to the harassment. Like, some of them really did not know. And it's weird to me that they didn't, but it seems like they didn't know. And now that they know, they're taking action. And so, you know, if we can get a few more of those, I feel like that'll be really, really helpful in the fight.
Well, if we can get a few more of those, and especially in academia, what role does tenure play in holding abusive faculty members accountable? Isabelle.
I work in an institution that doesn't have tenure, so I'm not really sure how much it applies. But in my experience, people that are abusive as they are students, as they are postdocs, and as they are faculty, and typically they don't change. And this is very different from people that just don't know better and are not aware of the issues. And those people you can educate, and you can make them through training, through education, and so on and so forth change. But whenever somebody abuses somebody, there has to be a zero tolerance policy in the institutions, so that these people are investigated and disciplined as needed be. That's my take on it.
Lisa, were you about to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in my experience in academics, especially, is that it's who's got the money, because there are things that I agree with Isabelle, but if somebody's got $6 million in grants, the institution, and Jane, you know, had some experience with this obviously from the film, that if someone has a lot of money in grants, if they have a Nobel Prize, if they have a lot of stature, the institution, you know, the postdoc is an at-will employee, and frankly, completely disposable. And, you know, so that the best way forward, though, because there are solutions to everything, is to find people who have power, who are untouchable, to be your allies. Nothing like this, but just trying to get policies through. When I was a postdoc and an instructor, was the best ally I had was a department chair, a male department chair, who coached us in how to do things, who gave us entree into who to talk to, who would help put policies forward and move things forward. So you need to look for those people and build that support as well. But I think the money is the thing that compels institutions.
Oh God. Oh, it's just heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to hear that. And I know that we can't solve this in this program right now, but at some point I would like for us to revisit, how do we move past that? How do we move past catering to those with the money, the Nobel Prizes, the up and coming rock stars? If we can't get past that, it's basically saying it's giving them a license to continue to do what they have been doing. And that's going to create an error for the next generation to model into that. So that's my fear, is if we don't course correct and change some of this and take a stand and say, we don't care. You have a Nobel Prize, you have $6 million, you're an up and coming rock star, you have the next innovation that's going to disrupt health. But at what point can we balance that with well-being? So I'm just getting emotional and choked up as you were talking about that, because I have been in this situation. Everyone on this panel has been in situations, and I'm quite sure some of our audience have been in that situation. And it's just heartbreaking that this still continues. But I'm glad that we were able to come together today and say, 2021, we're going to draw a line in the sand and we're going to move forward. And a part of one of the things that was discussed in the movie that I thought was interesting is when Dr. Banaji asked, how many great discoveries have been lost because we didn't have the eyes to see? What does that statement bring to mind for you? How does that statement make you feel? If Jane, if you want to start off with that.
Yeah, I mean, there's sort of like the pragmatic argument that we've lost a lot, right? And this is something that Nancy mentioned too, that if ability and intellect is equally distributed among the genders, male, female, and non and trans, then one of the things that we lose is actually that we're half as far in terms of like productivity and advancements that we could have been had we from the start embraced the abilities of women. I mean, for thousands of years we have not really fully taken advantage of the intellect of women. Where would we be, right? And so to me, that's sort of like the pragmatic argument that we're losing things. And then when we have diverse teams, that we're actually gaining so much. But then there's the other thing that's just, deep down, all scientists should be ethical. And I feel like, these pragmatic arguments are all well and good. I think it does help, our productivity and our institutions to have more diversity. But in terms, like when it comes down to it, I feel like the fairness issue and the justice issue is something that as scientists, we should all also be interested in rectifying, right? That it's, that we're supposed to be ethical, especially in the medical fields, right? You take trainings on ethical behavior and it's expected of you to be ethical in all of your endeavors. But here is a case where we fail over and over and over as institutions, as group managers, etc. And so I think that we have a long way to go. And the I guess the thing that comes from it, the result of fixing this is better institutions. So why not do it, right?
Isabelle, Lisa, would you like to add anything to that or? Understood.
It is, it is compelling. I mean, we no time for this, but I would say that most scientists don't have a strong grounding in the philosophy of the practice of science. What are they trying to do here? And we don't spend time in that training. We're training hands a lot of the time. And we don't spend time, I mean, there is some ethical training for people with grants. But nevertheless, we don't spend a lot of time on the culture of the practice of science.
Well, this has been an incredible discussion. We're coming up on the bottom half of the program, and we're going to open up this half with questions from the audience. And I can see a lot of questions coming in through the chat, everything from code switching, perceived stereotypes, women patriarchy support systems, and women abusing women in some aspects. And we're going to start off a question from Kevin. What might we do to ensure an equitable rate of advancement for all scientists in their chosen field to accelerate the changes to the power structure and norms that are needed? That's a mouthful. Should I repeat it or are we good? Okay.
Actually,
I'm going to break the question up. The first half, what might we do to ensure an equitable rate of advancement for all scientists in their chosen field to accelerate the changes to create a new power structure and norms that are needed?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that people who study this say is that, you can't have just like one woman or, one person of color or one woman of color in any particular area, that like you actually need to have a critical mass in order for people for them not to be, the one token woman or the one token Black person. And then also one of the other things that is, I'm told is helpful is when you just have one person, obviously they feel lonely, but you also expect that like, oh, women are this way, right? And so, you know, by broadening the number of minoritized individuals that you have in your institution, in like each part of your institution, you allow the full people to bring sort of the full diversity of opinions within that group too. And so I think that that's really important, is just not to say like, okay, well, we need to diversify, so we're gonna put, you know, one person of color over here, like you're designing a room or something like that. And also just to, you know, I feel like sometimes the lack of diversity is not the disease itself, but the disease is a poor culture, which leads to like really narrow diversity of the pool of candidates or employees. And so if you create a welcoming culture where people can bring their whole selves to the game, then, you know, diversity sort of follows that, because people will say like, oh, you got to come work here. This is a great place to be, right?
Agreed. Lisa.
I want to add one thing to what Jane said, is that there are data to show that it isn't just having 50% women, it's where they are. You have to have a certain, or minorities, or, you know, whatever group you're looking at. They have to be at the top levels before you start sucking people up through that pipeline. It doesn't move very well, if at all, otherwise. And so I think that's crucial. The hiring is sort of notion that you're going to bring people up from the bottom, so be patient. I can't think of a polite word for what I think of that.
Yeah, and
we'll guess.
I've heard arguments for that, like, oh, well, we don't want to poach them from, you know, another place. You know, I've heard all kinds of arguments for like not having people at the top, but there are no problems poaching white men from top positions.
Right.
You know?
Absolutely. This is, I said again, this is going to be a whole nother conversation. And we're going to go to our next question on that note. Our good friend, Jeff Kiplinger, asked, should philosophy and ethics training be a part of graduate curriculum? Isabelle.
Yes, absolutely. And from very early, starting in high school, college, and of course, once you're in university, but we do need that training, absolutely.
Lisa.
So I have been working for many decades with John Beckwith, who some people will know as being someone who has taught and has advocated, along with this group that I work with, teaching of ethics and philosophy of science is integrated into scientific programs and is an ongoing discussion. So, yes.
Okay, there we go. We have another question that's come in from Faith Stevenson. Are there initiatives at grant distribution that could begin to make shift happen? And are there groups lobbying for change at the federal level? Who wants to jump in?
I can start on that. So federal granting institutions are, I would say, slowly making progress. So there was maybe you saw in the film that there was a congressional inquiry into the idea of, you know, federal institutions funding people for years, even though they're sexual harassers and discriminate against different individuals. And so they took it up, and as a result, NSF, at least, the National Science Foundation, changed its rules. So it can now take into account past Title IX decisions or actions to, you know, consider whether they're going to fund someone in the future. There are huge, you know, it's wonderful that they do that, but there are huge holes in that process. So some journalistic organization, I forget which one, did a FOIA request to see how many institutions had actually like told NSF about their Title IX investigators. And it was ridiculous. For the whole country, it was like 10 or something like that. I forget the exact number, but it was ridiculously small. And as an individual, you can't tell NSF about, a Title IX case that you brought forward to the university. So there are huge holes in it. NIH hasn't like completely signed on yet. I think that there are a lot of things that can be done in the future. I'm trying to work with a group of physicists to try to link funding opportunities to ED&I outcomes, to say, if you consistently train 100% white men in your group, you should not be funded. There's just no reason why that should happen. So I think, call your senators and your Congress people and tell them that they should care about this, because it really does set the tone for actions that they should take. But it's such a slow process, and I don't know why that's true. Not much of a policy person, but I don't know. Lisa or Isabelle, do you have?
Yeah. So
go ahead, Isabelle. Sorry.
Sorry, Lisa. So little by little, the federal government, the NIH particularly, is acknowledging that the trainees that we have are following different paths. Before, it was not good if you train students or postdocs that were going to industry. That is no longer the case, so it's starting to change. And I think we need to accept that people have a life and a career that they want to have. And secondly, one of the things that is, or two of the things actually, that are stopping people this process, grant funding, from being fair is, how is the level of productivity being measured? And the level of productivity is being measured by, again, the white male that has 20 or 30 postdocs in the laboratory and produce X number of papers every year. If you are not that big, you still have to make that cut. And I think they should need to, the grant agencies need to take into account that part. How many people you really have in the laboratory, how many hours they actually work, and adjust what is expected for your productivity to be. So again, we don't fit all in the same measure. And then following on what Jane said, it is always, or it's been a trend in the past for white male to support and to advocate only for white males during the grant process and during the job process. I think they need to start also advocating for the diverse number of trainees that they have, when they have them, of course.
Thank you. We have a question that kind of relates to that. Sanjay would like to know, what are some of the more subtle or possibly unintentional behaviors that men should avoid? And what are some day-to-day practices and behaviors that they should be doing to be more adaptive and supportive to women? Lisa. Oh yes, I'm going to you for this.
Oh gosh. Well, there are, there are the simple things, right? You have people on your team who have daycare pickups. Don't schedule them into stuff like that. There are giving people opportunities, giving the people who work with you, all of them, but it is a tendency more so to overlook women. Give them an opportunity to present their own data. Give them a place at the table. It doesn't have to be the senior person doing that. Give people opportunities. You don't have to be the one to go to the conference. Send other people to go. You've already got a reputation. Help people with presentations before they give them. Help them polish it up. If I've said it a million times, it's probably about right. Never apologize for being right. And it's women who say, I'm sorry, but So helping people with those kinds of things, but that does mean helping men and women become aware of what those small things are. And there are professionals who provide that help. Don't expect, the women or the minorities to be the ones who have to be the one who always comes up with it. There are people who do this for a living who help with it. Okay.
I don't know if people can see the chat, but I just put a paper in the chat that is 11 things not to say to your female colleagues.
Oh, thank you.
It was written by some migraine specialists, which I find extra funny. So I don't know if people want to read those. I really love how they put everything in sort of a table form, like here's what you shouldn't say or ask. Here's a good response by a bystander. Here would be a bad response by a bystander. So I actually made a bingo game out of it. Like, if you've ever heard this, raise your hand.
Right. We're actually coming up with 10 minutes left in the program. We have a lot to get through, but I'm going to ask if Isabelle, Lisa, and Jane, if you would be so kind, if someone in the audience wants to reach out to you, would you mind putting in your contact information in the chat section when you get a chance for people to follow up with you, just in case we don't get to their question and comments in time before ending the program?
I'll put my Twitter handle. That's a good way of doing it. You don't want to be in my inbox because it's where emails go to die.
Anything that works for you, Twitter, LinkedIn, wherever you are, GroupMe, WhatsApp, Insta, wherever you are. My daughter's teaching me about 20 other places where people are that I had no idea where people were at. So wherever you feel most comfortable, please put that information into the chat. And Sanjay would like to know, not Sanjay, I'm sorry, Dana said that this is not a question, but just want to let Jane and Lisa know that you are hitting a really important issue of diversity at the top organizations. It starts at the board level. How do we go about creating a drastic ideological shift there?
Like at the top?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
So, yeah, well, you're thinking about it, Jane. There are organizations that train women to be board ready because otherwise they often don't make it. There's a certain amount of taking a chance on women on your board. Reaching out beyond the usual. I know this is very hard, and what I'm hearing from sort of board women that I know who are on boards is they're full. Their plate is full. Everybody wants a woman on the board now, and this is coming up now as a legal requirement in places. So, people are going to have to be a little more creative with this, but there are lots of places to reach out to that are working with women to prepare them for boards.
Yeah, I feel like that's also a sort of an unfortunate place for women to be too, because you get so many more criticisms as an administrator, as a woman, than you do as a man. And so I feel like one of the things, it's kind of like going into elected office, right? You look at that job and what they have to go through to even get elected, like all the mudslinging and terrible, and I feel like administrators get like a tiny bit of that, right? Like it's impossible to be an administrator and keep your, your eye on the like sort of long-term goal and still like, have people feel like you're an ally to them. And so I feel like just being a little bit understanding of people and not being, I don't know, not being so hard on administrators. Well, I'll say it. Like they have a really hard job and to keep people happy. And I feel like, people look at that and how people complain about administrators and like, I don't want to do that. I mean, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be at the top because I know how I feel about them. So I think it's a really hard thing. So we can maybe make it more attractive, maybe make, like Lisa said, it's more feasible and then more attractive once people get there.
Okay.
And I think
Isabelle.
this is a place where your colleagues that are male or can help actually, and can be your allies in supporting your role, whatever it is, at that high level.
Okay. We have another question in the chat. Jane, if there was something that should have been covered in the documentary or was covered, but unfortunately met the cutting room floor, what else should we have seen in the documentary that we didn't?
Oh, thanks for asking that. I like that question. So one of the things that didn't really come up very much, although you could kind of see into it, is that the whole Title IX process, and probably there are human resource processes too, you know, you submit something to there, and the expectation is, at least this is my expectation, that it's kind of like the court of law, you know, everybody brings their best side to it. But in the case of Title IX, it's not like that at all. And this was surprising to me. And I don't know why it was, but the people in Title IX offices and maybe human resources, they work for the university or the company, right? And so they're not really like at liberty to be like an independent judge or something. And so I do want people to know that it's not fairness that you experience when you go there and report. And this is something that, you know, people always say like, well, if women reported more, this wouldn't happen. No, women report. What happens is that people don't believe them. People treat them poorly. The asymmetry and just the effort on my, you know, people working to see if what I was saying was true and what he was saying was true were completely uneven. And so if you hear that something like went to a Title IX office and, you know, nothing came from it, that it's not that the woman was not telling the truth or the man was not telling the truth. It's possible that it just was handled completely incorrectly.
I want to say that in companies, there's often nowhere to go. You can go to HR. HR represents the company, no matter how well-meaning that is their job. And, you know, I, for one, advocate that companies have, I mean, large ones do sometimes, have an ombuds office, someone who is distinctly separate, or whether that becomes a consulting position. I mean, that's something where the universities, MIT in particular, shout out to Mary Rowe, who actually is Molly Potter's sister-in-law, for having a place where you can at least go and have a straight talk that won't get reported back, where you are safe to be able to talk about what the possible consequences could be and what the possible actions are.
Well, we are coming up on our last question. I'm sorry that I can't get the rest of them in, everyone, but please reach out with your questions and your comments. Is there a sequel to Picture a Scientist, and what things will that include, if so? Jane.
Oh, so there are some distribution plans that they're still working out for Picture a Scientist to come out, like a network / you know, streaming thing. I don't know if they're working on another one. I think that they have lots of ideas, but they wanted to, you know, if they do one about race in academia, I think that was something that came up so much that they, you know, kind of only superficially handled in Picture a Scientist, but they want to partner with directors who are people of color. So I think that is one of the plans. I would love them to make, like, you know, volume 4. I mean, just like the whole, you know, parenthood, motherhood situation in academia, I think could make a great film on its own. You know, that's such a big topic. But
I guess on my side, what I would have liked to see in a sequel will be the perspective from immigrant students and postdocs, and how being dependent on a visa makes you more vulnerable. That's something that I would have liked to see. And also, being educated in a different system with different requirements, how that stops you from progressing as fast as people that have been educated here. And one example, for example, I never had to write a single personal statement in my life while I was training in Spain. And then you come here and you have to do that, and it's not natural to you. So there are things that are different in the education systems where we come from that we need to be aware, so that if we are to level the playing field for all of us.
Well, thank you. So picture a scientist film crew. You have great ideas. The Mass Bio community is not going to ask for credit, but it sounds like you should have 3, 4, 5 films in a pipeline just from this discussion. I would like to say thank you to everyone for joining us today. It is clear that no group will advance and realize true equity without the partnership of working with one another, because not one of us is stronger than all of us. And I do hope that this makeshift happen conversation will encourage dialogue focused on how people from all perspectives can be better allies, build broad coalitions, and advocate for justice for all communities and individuals, for members of all historically marginalized and excluded groups to be safe from victimization, achieve health, realize their full potential, and contribute to society. We must be allies. We must work together to advance this, and our voices collectively can go farther and have more impact than we were ever before. So I look forward to working together with you moving forward. I'd like to thank each and every one of our guests. Isabelle, Lisa, Jane, thank you for joining us and for allowing people to follow up with you directly. I'd like to thank our guests for attending. I'd like to thank all of those of you who are allies and those of you who have watched the movie. And if you have not, please make sure that you do so. If you have any questions or comments, please let us know. Again, I would like to thank Frequency Therapeutics for powering this program, bringing this to us and sharing this with us. And I welcome anyone to send any more programming ideas that you may have for Makeshift Happen for 2021. Thank you for joining us again. I look forward to seeing you again soon. In February, as you know, it's Black History Month. We have a lot of programs and a lot of opportunities. Please reach out if you'd like to contribute. But our first program is going to be on February 1st, where we're going to discuss vaccine hesitancy in the Black and Brown communities. Thank you for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you February 1st.